Hi, I'm going to go back through immigration before I go on my quest to show the country railways, how they couldn't have been built in that time and how they were engineered by Brunel, an engineer from England that engineered the Bendigo and the Geelong Ballarat lines, and I believe Bendigo to Echuca at 7.25 gauge, so it could travel at higher speeds, but I think so we could have more room. But let's look at immigration. So 1788, 110 days, 216 passengers. This early steamship never came to Australia. You had to stop other places. The gold rushes, direct to Sydney, I don't believe it. And the Clipper, direct to Sydney, what about Melbourne? So here, again, 1844, 1849. I'm looking at 1844 to 1847. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ships. 6 ships for over 4 years. That's only 1,200 people in Melbourne by the time the Argus newspaper's out. And I've got photographs of pre-Argus newspaper. So 1851 to 1881, we get an intake of 260,000 people. So divide that by 30 years, it's 8,500 people. So 8,500 people divided by 200 is 43 ships a year just to Melbourne. And the ship takes 6 to 10 months. So 43 designated ships? A ship every 9 days to Melbourne. And it has to double to 4 ships a day to Melbourne, not mentioning Adelaide, Brisbane, Hobart or Sydney. I'm 100% certain people are arriving and departing, but not through the Anglo Customs Gate. But anyway, now here, 1851, Colony of Victoria, 1852, the Melbourne Hobsons Bay Railway formed. I've got photographs here, Melbourne to Port Melbourne, Hobsons Bay. I've got photographs that look like Brunel gauge. Funny how the Victorian Railways opens up, 1856. Williamstown Workshops, 1858. And here, 1859, a lot of the suburban lines are sort of starting to reconnect, which they're calling like Essendon, which they're calling Melbourne Mount Alexander and Murray River Rail Company. See, the Melbourne Mount Alexander Murray River Rail Company and the Geelong and Melbourne Rail Company would be Brunel. But we'll jump up to 1861 and we'll see Sunbury to Woodend, 24 miles. Then 1862, North Geelong to Ballarat, 54 miles. Then 1862, April, Woodend to Kyneton, 8 miles. And then in October, Kyneton to Bendigo, 43 miles. So we'll have a look at some of these rail lines. And we can read up here some of the rubbish about how the first train did not arrive back in Geelong until 4 p.m. On the arrival, the celebratory banquet started. It was estimated 4,000 people, served some 8,000 tonnes of food. It was held in the stations itself. I don't believe half of this. And also down here, interesting, on its first journey to Ballarat, the train ran out of wood to fuel its steam engine, so the crew were forced to chop down some trees in Meredith to ensure the train made it to Ballarat, to the Ballaratians. Okay, here's Werribee. This is on the line to Geelong from Melbourne. Here's Geelong, or around the yards looking into Geelong. And I don't believe these sheds here should have had their walls knocked out. It doesn't look like the railway lines are even connected into them yet. That's Geelong, nice station. Geelong again, departing Geelong, I think heading towards Warrnambool. That's the goods yards, and you can see again these buildings on the left, they haven't got these little entrance ways knocked down to run the goods wagons into yet, and there's no rail line in the centre area there around the shed. So all this freight, moving freight between two places, is capitalism. That's North Geelong Yard. Moorabool, that would have been built in the year, plus the Brunel gauge, there it is there, Moorabool Viaduct, Bannockburn built, Lethbridge or Lay Road built, Meredith, Bannockburn, Lethbridge, Ballarat. You can see strange looking materials here. There's Ballarat from the west side, Ballarat station. Notice there's no clock because, I don't know, I don't think they needed clocks, the Arabs. Now this is the Phoenix Foundry, which is a Tartarian company, and I don't know whether this is a setup because you can't get a locomotive out there. If you look in the foreground here, he's digging mud, and it's such a manicured picture. Here's the eagle, our bunjil, and here's the most cheap effort lithograph photograph I've ever seen. Now here it mentions Ismabad Kingdom Brunel was inspecting the railways here and did engineer it. And these are some other times: 1861 Woodend, Kyneton, Castlemaine to Bendigo in 62. Now here you can see the rail gauge is 7 1/4, 1, 2. In the far right corner, they're bringing in the 5'8.5", I think, I can't remember. And also this picture, you'll see many different lines going down, but they're breaking in the centre. So that's the 7 1/4 being re-gauged to 5'8.5", I think, broad gauge to broad gauge. And here's a little mention of Brunel, but mainly mentioning Greater West GWR. Now here, Victorian government. These are the things I find. Like, what's happening here? And here's some bridges. So this is the railway line. This is Sunbury to Woodend. Built all this. So perhaps these gentlemen, the Tartarians, do work very, very hard, and they don't mess around, and they just work to geological or cosmological angles, so everything works out for them because they know they've always got the supports. This is Macedon, Woodend, looking down at Mount Macedon, looking north, Woodend. A pose picture for Woodend. That must be one of the first trains for Woodend. Kyneton. So from Kyneton we go all the way, build this in a few months. That's knocked over in a few months. That's to show that it's similar to Brunel's architecture. Knock this over in a month. There is the construction of Tartarian Viaduct. There is completed Tartarian Viaduct. And another rubbish quality. I think this is Tartarian. That could be Alphington Tunnel or Big Hill. There's two tunnels, but that's a Brunel tunnel there. Castlemaine, looking well established. Castlemaine with strange signals there for some Tartarian life. Kangaroo Ground, Kangaroo Flat. Now it's coming into Bendigo, where we'll see different tracks again, all the different types of tracks together, where it was for Brunel gauge. And they move it all around. That could be the first loco up. That's the south side with the platform to the right and the goods sheds to the left. That's a loco depot in Bendigo. That's sus to me. Muddy. Very muddy coming in. Again, these little entrances knocked out. I think it's just architectural design, having archways. That's a nice shot, but where's the trams? Echuca, the length of the train, knocking entrance into these palaces for the keep the carriages in for the king. Echuca wharfs, very low. Now this bridge looks similar to the bridges on the northeastern line from Shepparton, from Seymour to Albury. So Brunel may have been doing something out that way as well. Now this is flood mud rail where it's been built by the government. There's some nice architecture there. Hear that strange signal. Loco sheds. That's Deniliquin or Moama. Now here, they've driven the train right in and they're digging out around under the wheels. So it's definitely digging out the railway line. Digging out the railway line. Here, I don't know why they haven't just gone up on a slight rise, why they have to dig out, unless they're digging out the railway line. So it's quite sus. It's a different approach than the other way. The train's not all the way in there. Now here is in Kensington. I mean, this is hundreds and hundreds of years' work. Look at all the hard work they have to do. Here it is on the downside. Bags and bags of mud, little train in the corner. And now we don't have a slave trade, we just have Tartarians. Bags and bags of mud stretching all around this yard. Gigantic train with a siding of mud. That is the biggest giveaway. Look at that. It's ploughing through the mud. It's a ballast plough. On the right hand side, all the erosion where the tide has hit it. Just stripped foreshore. Warrigal with some strange, gigantic skeleton trees in the background. Skeleton trees everywhere on the Nuji line, repairing bridges. So it depends how long the Anglos have been here, just observing this civilization until they hijacked it and turned them into true slaves working for money. So there's a man working. There's the scarred hills from a gigantic fire. There's Timboon or Nowra. This is some information on, what's this one? Oh, Walhalla. See, gold was discovered in 1862, but the railway line didn't come till 1910. And the long tunnel introduced both electricity, this is right down the bottom, I'm reading this. The Long Tunnel Company introduced both electricity 1884 and the telephone 1891 into the mine, although Walhalla briefly led the world in having 2 electric street lights in 1884. I don't know where Wikipedia get this. And then there's picking on the Italians that weren't Italians. They were Persians or Tartarians or Ottoman or Arabs. They weren't Italians. There was no Italians. So here, the early development of hydroelectric resources. First light. Should have highlighted it. And Victoria. 1867. It's 1888 when Victoria gets electricity. So there's electricity here. It's very, very badly covered up. Here we are in Walhalla. Just a mountainside covered in sediment. The whole side of the mountain's trashed. More mountain ranges. Burnt, trying to recover. Giant trees. Here, trees thrown down hills. Higgledy-piggledy way of trying to repair this. Where does that bridge go? Straight into the wall? Straight into a side of the mountain? Here it is repaired. That looks like it's been destroyed. It's not being repaired. Again, looks like it's been destroyed. A lot of work to be done. Bit of sediment running down the hill. Sediment streaks all the way down the hill. Something, Valhalla. The tunnel being cleaned out. The tunnel, more sediment, and that hill you can just see it's like shaved. Sediment spilling all the way down into the town. Must have been full. And here you can see trees, boom, on houses, in paddocks, all sorts of places. And this is Seymour. Now this river flooded, there's the bridge. So the bridge was out, the town was flooded, and they had to dig the town out. And that's why it took so long to get into Seymour, I believe. Because this bridge was here, or Brunel, I reckon this bridge was here because you can see flood marks, mud scouring, the background's been nuked. Now this picture you can see the join. On the right hand side they say 1950. On the left hand side I'm saying flood mud. So aerial picture from the 19th century. So there is the right hand side and there is the left hand side. And you can see they're very different. The shadow work on the top in the cutting, the clearing of the tracks, even the carriages, nothing really fits together. That is the coal stage. Now let's turn around, roundhouse, Seymour Station. Seymour Station in the 20th century. Some geezer down there. Benalla, looking mad, Benalla does. Benalla, Barnawatha, Wodonga, or Albury. Now these are the cartoon pictures, see? When would have this been drawn? 1830s, 1840s? How do they know what the bridge looks like? And trees leaning over. Another one, Euroa. It doesn't look anything like that Euroa. It hasn't got two platforms. Or did it? Or was it built to Brunel 7 1/4? And there's their bridge over Albury. And that's what we scrapped. That's what we had, and that's what we had to wait until the Americans said, put your cigarettes on it. All right, thanks for watching that. Bye.